So today we are talking about categories on your blog post. And so if your blog post has categories like how to, or tutorials, or tips, or insights, I'm going to say this with a little bit of tough love, but you are probably organizing your blog the wrong way around. It might feel logical, and it's often how a lot of people do set up their categories, but it's making your blog harder to find and harder to navigate. And at worst, it's probably making it harder for visitors to your website to actually become clients. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why this is one of the most common mistakes that coaches make on their blogs, and a small shift that you can make to make sure that categories actually start working harder for you, and how you can set yours up properly. So that's for SEO, for visitors, and for your business generally. And then stick around to the end, because I'll show you the exact category structure that I would use depending on whether you're a coach, a therapist, a course creator. And we're going to start with one specific WordPress default that makes the whole thing so much worse. And it's one of those little things that takes a tiny little fix, and yet hardly anybody ever does it. Hardly anybody makes time to fix this. So that first thing we're going to have a look at is a small thing, but it's a clue to a bigger problem, and it's the uncategorized default category. When you set up a WordPress website, it automatically sets up a category that it puts all of your blog posts into, called uncategorized. And it will only take them out of that uncategorized category when you assign your blog post a specific category. And if you don't actively choose a category, then when you hit publish, WordPress just plonks your post in there. And that means you end up with blog posts that are publicly labeled uncategorized. It means that you end up with a category page that WordPress creates for you by default that is literally called uncategorized. And sometimes you'll end up with a URL, a web address, with uncategorized baked into it. Let me show you what I mean. Let me make this bigger first. So this is the default blog post that ships with any new WordPress installation, called a Hello World. And you can see I've changed it. So it's now called a general category, but it would normally be uncategorized. And if I take you over to settings and writing, you will see here that you can, permalinks is where I want to be, that you can set a custom structure and you can add in your category into there. And even the example URL that it gives you has uncategorized in it. So you just have to be really careful, make sure that you are setting up your permalink structure correctly. But even if you don't, even if you want your category name in there, as long as you change it, it's going to make sure that uncategorized does not show up in your permalinks. So the thing is, when you've got that uncategorized in there, it looks like you haven't really finished setting it all up. And the thing is, you probably have finished setting it all up. You've probably spent hours on your homepage, and you've probably rewritten your about page 3 times. And this little tiny default setting, it just undermines all of that work that you have already done. So here's the thing, uncategorized is the visible part of the symptom, but actually it points to a bigger problem, which is how people think about categories generally in the first place. So let's talk about why your categories are sometimes working against you, because the mistake that I see almost every coach, therapist, course creator, service provider make, they name their categories after the type of post. And that's often because when we're talking about content creation, people will talk about putting your posts into buckets, like behind the scenes, or a tutorial, or an insight, or a how-to. And it feels logical. And so it's how we think about creating the content. So we think, okay, this is a how-to post, so it goes in the how-to category. But it's not how your visitors think about reading those blog posts. And it's definitely not how Google reads your site. So here's why that matters. There are 3 things. One is credibility and navigation. So when somebody reads a useful blog post and clicks the category to find out more like it and read more like it, the how-tos don't tell them anything. How to what? So if they wanted more content on the topic they were just reading about, that's what they're after. They're not wanting more content in the same format as that necessarily. So that's the first thing. The second thing is SEO. So search engines use your category structure to understand what your site is about and the topics that you have authority on. So a category called how to doesn't give Google anything. A category called website strategy or client attraction tells Google exactly what I'm an expert in. And topic-based categories build that topical authority, whereas format-based ones don't. So that's the second one. The third one is your categories aren't pulling your weight in your business and on your website if they're not guiding people anywhere. They're just sorting posts into folders. And so actually, it's not really an organizational thing. Your categories are really working against you on 3 fronts at once if you're not nailing down these categories. So here's how I like to think about this. When I'm talking to my clients about it, we talk about the blogs being not just a collection of posts, it's a journey, and your categories are what really shape the journey. When someone lands on your blog, the categories are telling them what it is that you help with, how your thinking is organized, and here's where to go next. And so instead of naming categories after the format of the post, if we name them after the topics that you can actually help with, it becomes a small shift, but it can change so much in terms of the usability of your site. Okay, so let me walk you through fixing this uncategorized blog post. So we're just going to walk through in about four steps. It's going to take us a couple of minutes. That's it. So, and I've already given you a little bit of an insight by going into here, the writing. So your settings and writing, and here you'll see your default post category. Now, because I'm on a pretty new installation, I don't have any blog posts on here. So the only category I have here is the general one, which for you will be uncategorized if you haven't changed it. The place where you change that is you go into posts and categories. And in here, this is your default category. And you can't delete your uncategorized category. You can rename it. So you can rename this into whatever you wanted. So you could, once you've done that, you've updated it, and then you go back into your settings and writing. And here you'll see that my default post category now is other. It was general when we looked at it a moment ago, but I've just changed it. And that means if ever I forget to categorize a blog post, it's going to show up in this category, whatever I've called it, other, general, whatever we want to call it. And so it doesn't look as bad or as unfinished as uncategorized. So that's the first thing that you can do, is you can just change it there. So you're renaming your uncategorized, and then you're changing that default so that it always drops into that kind of general bucket. And then if you've got a whole load of existing blog posts, you can clean them up by going into your blog posts, and you can just do a bulk edit on them. So you can do a bulk edit, choose the categories. So you'll see now my categories, again, we've just got other. And Hello World is now in the other category. But you can bulk edit all of them to just pop them into this new category, or pop them into the correct category that they should be in. And you'll only need to do that if you've got a whole load. So because you can filter them, so you can see which ones you haven't yet categorized, and then bulk edit them, which is just a huge time saver. So just assign them to their proper category and you're done in a couple of clicks. So now what you do want to check is that if you're using a page builder, something like Divi, which is one of the page builders that I use and it's what I teach, then you might have created like a blog grid, and you can actually assign which categories you want to show up within that grid. And so if you've created a general or an other category and you don't want that one to show up, then you can just leave it out and include the rest of the correctly named ones within your grid. So those are the only ones that are going to show up on your actual main blog index or wherever that blog grid is showing up. So it just helps make sure that none of those other ones just sneak through. And okay, so that's the cleanup done. And now for the part that a lot of people really, really struggle with is finding a category structure that's really going to work. And if you name your categories after the topics that you help with, not after the format, it's going to really help. So for a coach, that might look like confidence and mindset, client attraction, or business strategy. For a therapist, it might be anxiety, relationships, self-worth. For someone like me, it might be website strategy, WordPress and Divi, getting clients. And so once you've got those, you can start to see the difference. So each category now answers a visitor's question that they might be asking, like, what else does she help with that I might need help with? And each one builds your authority on a specific topic in the eyes of Google and your visitors. And that really matters. So each one maps to a place where people could potentially start working with you. So that's the rule that ties it all together. Every category should represent something that you actually help with, and ideally something that you sell. So 3 to 5 topic-based categories are going to beat 8 formula-based categories or format-based categories every time. So if a category doesn't represent a real area of your expertise, then just leave it out. You don't need it in there. So let's just talk through that, because your categories, they probably feel like a small thing, but they're one of those small structural decisions that can actually really shape how professional your website feels and how easily Google can find it and navigate around it, and how naturally a visitor moves towards becoming a client. So if you get those right, and your blog posts will suddenly start doing more for you without you having to write additional blog posts. So thank you so much for watching. And if you watch this and you've had a penny drop moment or something has actually really helped, then please go ahead and hit the bell and subscribe. I often drop videos like this with help around your website. And I've got another blog post, and I'll pop it on the on a card that you can see about how you can start driving more traffic to your blog posts.